I'm Smita Sharma. I'm an independent journalist as well as a visiting faculty at the Kautilya School of Public Policy. You're watching our conversation, Let's Talk Policy, where we try and do a deep dive on issues related to important developments, policy matters. And we hope that, of course, there is a lot of food for thought by the time we wrap up our conversation. Also, just a quick reminder for all those tuning in through the live streaming platforms of Kautilya that our admission processes are on for the MPP cohort of 2023-2025. If you are somebody who is interested in or know somebody who's interested in public policy, do take a look at the website, the course curriculum, the faculty, and see if this is a place where you would like to apply in for. Having said that, what is it that we are going to discuss today? There's a landmark ruling that actually came in on 2nd of March. This was long awaited. The Supreme Court basically said that the Election Commission appointments should be done through a collegium. So far, remember, it's the President of India who appoints the Chief Election Commissioner, the 2 election commissioners. They have a tenure of 6 years or up to the age of 65 years, whichever is earlier. Of course, the Chief Election Commissioner, if in case he or she has to be impeached, that has to be through a parliamentary process. But what the Apex Court has now said basically is that the President of India, based on an advice from a committee comprising the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition in the Lok Sabha, and the Chief Justice of India, will be making these appointments now. So the EC, the 2 ECs, the CECs, of course, they enjoy the same salaries, perks as available to judges to the Supreme Court of India. But when it comes to the collegium system now, will it really help giving more muscle, giving more transparency to the electoral body, to the main body that oversees elections in the world's largest democracy? There have been several questions that have been arising. This is going to be a key topic that we will discuss today, along with the other critical areas of electoral bonds. That's again another issue that has been, the hearings have been on, a lot of furor from the opposition. The issues around the electronic voting machines, EVMs. Just the other day, we had Aditya Thackeray, who was on the campus of Kautilya School of Public Policy, where he mentioned that, again, India needs to go back to the ballot paper. All of these questions I'm going to put forward to my esteemed panel here. And all of you who are attending this live stream also can raise your hands, put your questions in the chat box, let us know. I will take in your questions. We'll also ask you to unmute yourself and come and ask a question or two. I have with me Mr. Sanjay Hegde. He's a senior advocate in the Supreme Court, a constitutional expert, as well as Dr. S.Y. Quraishi. He's been the former Chief Election Commissioner of India and an author of 2 important books, The Population Myth, Islam, Family Planning and Politics in India, as well as An Undocumented Wonder. Thank you so much to both of you for finding time to do this with us, this conversation with us, Dr. Quraishi.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And to you also, Sanjay ji.
Thank you. Thank you, Smita. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you. If I could start, because one of the things that the Supreme Court said is Election Commission cannot claim to be independent, then act in an unfair manner. A person in state of obligation to the state cannot have an independent frame of mind. An independent person will not be servile to those in power. When we start off this conversation, I would like to know from you, Mr. Hegde, if you could throw some light on the significance of this verdict and also some of the comments that were made by the Supreme Court as well that is important for ordinary citizens to understand.
Well, the Supreme Court has tried its best to see that institutions are manned by people who inspire confidence across the board. So you've seen that earlier, the appointment of the CBI director, for instance, had to be done with the concurrence of the Chief Justice of India, the Prime Minister of India, and the Leader of the Opposition, or the Leader of the single largest party. So insofar as election commissioners are concerned, Article 324 of the Constitution has a vast repository of powers, which is vested in the Commission, and it says that the Election Commission shall consist of the Chief Election Commissioner and such number of other election commissioners, if any, as the President may from time to time fix. And the appointment of the election commissioner and other election commissioners shall subject to the provisions of any law made in that behalf by Parliament be made by the President. So the Constitution postulated that, if there was a law made by Parliament, then the appointment would go as per that law. But if there was no law made by Parliament, the President would appoint. Now, the President appoints chief judges of the Supreme Court. The President means the government of the day. So, for a long time, India got along with only one chief election commissioner. It was in the 80s that there was an election commissioner called Mr. Perishastri, with whom the Rajiv and the government of that day did not really see eye to eye. So then they used this power to appoint 2 additional election commissioners and said that voting would be by majority within the commission. If I remember rightly, the gentlemen were S.S. Danoa and another gentleman. So
this was during P.V. Narasimha Rao's time as
no. Before that.
Earlier. Okay.
Earlier, during the Rajiv Gandhi era. No sooner that VP Singh came in, that the office of election commissioner was abolished, and we went back to having a chief election commissioner. And then came the incomparable Mr. T.N. Seshan. And it was in Mr. Seshan's time when he used this vast repository of powers which were reposed in the election commission by the Constitution to set things right the way he saw it. He even cancelled the elections to the Patna constituency, where the candidate was none other than the then Prime Minister, Gujarat. All kinds of things he did. He used the powers to the hilt. So then it was the Narasimha Rao government which then appointed 2 more. That was Mr. G.V.G. Krishnamurthy and Mr. M.S. Gill. Mr. Seshan challenged that in court, saying that it was an attack on the independence of the Chief Election Commissioner. There was first there was a stay by the Supreme Court, and then later the Supreme Court said, no, the government has the powers under the Constitution, and we do not see anything wrong. And so that's how it became a 3-member election commission, and ever since that, the 3-member has come to stay. And what happens is that a person joins as election commissioner and then in due course of seniority goes on to become chief election commissioner. So you almost invariably know the day that you are appointed as to when you will be election commissioner, which are the elections, especially the Lok Sabha elections, assuming that the Lok Sabha runs for a full term, which ones you are likely to be asked upon to conduct. Normally, these appointments made by the government include senior bureaucrats like Quraishi Saab or somebody, or people who are at the secretary level. But the question is, do governments choose men of fierce independence or men of independence acceptable across the board? Or do they choose people who they think are seemingly independent, but could possibly tilt in crucial decisions towards the government of the day? So there was this anomaly. And you see, the latest appointment was of a gentleman who was still in service, was asked to put in his papers, and then very soon thereafter appointed chief election commissioner. So what election commissioner? So what was it that was so special about it? And naturally there were murmurs, etc., etc. So the Supreme Court has currently said that, look, Parliament has not made a law. Till Parliament makes a law, we can at least fix guidelines of the manner of appointment. And in the guidelines, they have said that a 3-member committee will appoint, and that includes like the CBI director. So essentially, the court has filled in the gap which has been left by the legislature. Now, we do not know whether Parliament will accept it, whether Parliament will come in soon with a law, or whether this system of the three members, two users of the system, that's the leader of the House and the leader of the opposition, plus a neutral Chief Justice, whether this system will be allowed to operate or whether Parliament will come in. This is the rough layout of things so far.
Okay, so we will talk about, of course, what happens next and the way forward. But Dr. Quraishi, coming to you, and before I get your opinion on this system for the moment, I want you to tell us your thoughts on how serious do you find this question of erosion of trust in the main body that conducts elections in the world's largest democracy?
Well, I'm very sad and sorry to admit that there is an erosion. And the index is very clear. I used to make a presentation all over the world. One of my slides was a collage, a montage of newspaper headlines. And newspaper headlines and which I had collected after 2009 election. Well done, EC. Congratulations, EC. EC is the winner. And these were the headlines across all the newspapers. Whichever, we could not have bought those headlines. Now, in 2019, I have collected 36 headlines. Disgrace election commission, shame on you election commission, same newspapers. Surely something is wrong, which hurts. So we need to worry about that, and which is perhaps the reason why even Supreme Court came in on something which had been pending for a long time. Because not only election commission should be fair, free and neutral and independent, it should appear to be so. And the latest judgment about the collegium system, we had been demanding, as I was demanding it. Although somebody would have said, look, you came through the same procedure. Yeah, and I said, yes, I did. I was a beneficiary of the same procedure, but I was not comfortable. But I said I would be more comfortable if leader of opposition had also signed my appointment letter, because that will be a proof that I have a very wide acceptance, which is a very important point, important issue of perception. And I'm on record in various interviews saying that, and many of my predecessors, chief election commissioners, have been on record, not while they were posted or maybe when they were posted or even after, demanding such a thing. We are familiar with the collegium system. It is working pretty well in many cases, except, of course, one question is asked whether director CBI, who is not a constitutional body, he is not even a statutory body, he is the head of a department like director of agriculture. No different. But why the Supreme Court said there should be a special procedure because of the role they perform and some independence and neutrality which is expected. So that is the criticism against our suggestion, against our demand. Look what has happened in the case of CBI. So are they independent? Are they not towing the line of the government? Are they not raiding people left, right and center? So same thing election commission can go, even if they're appointed through the collegium system. However, at least if the leader of opposition is a party to this decision through the collegium, at least the opposition will have no moral right to point fingers against that person, because they have been also party to the appointment of an officer, the CEC or the election commissioner.
But will that also turn this into a possible battlefield, sir, a constant battlefield? Because given right now the kind of relations that we are seeing between the ruling party and the opposition parties, the lack of any dialogue, the lack of any healthy debate, I mean, do you see that this will constantly become a tussle where perhaps finalizing a name will become a very, very difficult process?
Yeah, it could be, because there are many things which have been left unsaid. And in fact, the collegium, three-member collegium, if the majority decision is taken by majority, the leader of opposition is most likely to be in the minority, and he will go back disgruntled. And in fact, I read recently this context of this judgment, the leader of the opposition saying that in many of these cases, including CPI and others, he was overruled. Now, I personally feel that the Supreme Court can come in, that the decision of this collegium should be unanimous. I'm sure in 140 crore people, there will be 3 persons in the country on which all political parties can agree that the guy is a good guy. So where is the question? This majority minority actually will create more bitterness and lack of trust. Therefore, if you really want to cleanse the system, these are the things. My personal feeling and experience is that there is widespread ignorance on the subject in the Supreme Court, in the government, in the jurists, and everybody. For instance, this case, the Supreme Court mentioned why this EC was appointed in a hurry. And suddenly he applied for a voluntary retirement and it was given one day. So, my conclusion, that gentleman himself was ignorant. The government was ignorant. There is no need for a VRS. Already the rule is that I was a secretary today and tomorrow I became the election commissioner. And I had one more year to go. So it is called deemed retirement. Even if I do not seek VRS, even if I do not retire, the moment I take charge as election commissioner, I have deemed to have retired. So now the deemed retirement, obviously Mr. Goyal did not know about, which is why this hurry and this drama and all that will lead to controversy. There was no need for all that. He could have joined the next day, just as I did.
I think Smita is having problems with her.
Yes, she's back. She's back.
Smita, you have to unmute yourself.
Unmute.
I'm sorry if I'm looking like a ghost right now, but I think the inverter's also fallen out. The electricity is gone. So, but I can hear you all. Please carry on. So, Dr. Quraishi, why I'm also asking this, and I would like to take this question to Sanjay ji as well. Sanjay ji, would you say that so far, now the appointments process had started to look very arbitrary, that there was an absolute absence of transparency, that it had started to look like this was all about quid pro quo and post-retirement benefits, the appointments in the Election Commission?
No, there's nothing called post-retirement benefits. As such, Mr. Quraishi told you that as a secretary level officer, he was a secretary one day, then he was appointed to the Election Commission. So there has been a tradition of bureaucrats being appointed to the Election Commission. And this is one more assignment, maybe a big assignment pre-retirement or just after retirement. But then they're also appointed to the Union Public Service Commission. And there are several posts where the accumulated wisdom of the years is used. Now, that's not the problem. The problem is that if you give an impression that such and such a person is my man, such and such a person is not my man. And therefore, it will only be my man who will be in charge of the most important process in a democracy of free and fair elections. If a person comes in with the previous reputation of having been somebody's man, then it is highly unlikely that the person will command universal acceptance from the other side, particularly when there are decisions which are taken in the course of an election, which taken by somebody else would cause no comment, but taken by this person would cause comment. So you have seen these questions about why elections were staggered in West Bengal over so many phases, while elections in Gujarat or in Karnataka are held in one day. So there have been allegations that, the schedule is drawn to benefit X, Y, or Z, or the recent decision of the Election Commission to recognize one faction of the Shiv Sena and take away even the symbol from the other faction. All these have consequences. So unless there is broad acceptance that, whoever got appointed with the kind of concurrence across the board, then there might be a crisis of credibility. And that's what the Election Commission, what the Supreme Court has tried to fill in.
So, Dr. Quraishi, in fact, another former Chief Election Commissioner in an interview to Mr. T.S. Krishnamurthy to read He said basically that when appointments are made by 3 members, I'm sure people at the political parties will at least realize that it is a credible appointment and a credible institution. So you do think that this step, it may not be the best option, like we say that, democracy may not really be the best form of governance, but it's better than the other. So do you think that this will start to help rebuilding that faith?
Yeah, definitely, because the collegium where leader of opposition is involved and the Chief Justice of India is involved, the presumption will be that the selection is fair. But as I said, something which is not so much in the public domain, and on how many occasions the collegium has decided by 2-1, overruling the leader of the opposition, and he has always gone back frustrated. So now he was brought in for credibility and he is sent back frustrated. Does it enhance credibility? So which is why I say that nobody has debated it. Nobody has even discussed it. Why can't it be unanimous decision? In fact, in the election commission also, we have decided that all the administrative decisions will be unanimous, not 2-1. So whereas judicial decisions we surely by majority, but the unanimous decision of a collegium would enhance the trust of the leader of opposition in the process. Smita, to you.
No, I think there again is a problem out there, but Quraishi sahab,
yeah, you can continue, Hegde ji.
No. The question of
Think
unanimity. The question of unanimity might also lead to a logjam, no? That if the government of the day and the Chief Justice say no, this person is okay, and then the opposition says whoever you bring up, we will say no.
So, but Sanjay ji, as I mentioned in the beginning, that in 140 crore people, surely there will be 3 on which there can be unanimity. We can find if there is no unanimity on A, bring B. If not on B, bring C. There will be so many others. So at least then the government also will bring up such names which will help a unanimity. That's a reform which needs to be discussed because, and I got this idea when I read the frustration of the leader of the opposition in several cases. He listed several cases that he was overruled and on this for this reason or that reason. So we need to hear him out and understand what is his grievance. Now, secondly, if I make since we are still on that judgment also is incomplete. And there again, I feel that Supreme Court has not fully understood the issue. Now, the issue was also about protection of the 2 election commissioners from removal. They examined it and they ruled it out, now, which is a grave mistake. And I'll tell you from experience, nobody knows it better than somebody who's been on that position. Now, the 2 election commissioners who are not protected from removal, they are vulnerable. They feel they are on probation. They keep looking over their shoulder whether the government is happy with me or not. Will they elevate me or not? So their protection is absolutely important. And Supreme Court did not consider it at all. Dismissed it. I find this judgment to that extent extremely flawed. Now, these 2 commissioners who feel they are on probation can overrule a defined CEC 10 times a day because through the process of majority decision. If suppose a CEC is going against the government doesn't like his faith, the government will use the other 2 whose tenure, whose future is in the hands of the government. They say, look, keep overruling this guy morning and evening.
No, the answer, Mr. Quraishi, is that the Constitution currently provides protection only for the CEC.
No, fair
so
enough.
that would require a constitutional amendment.
Absolutely. There have been 100 amendments, so why not another 5? Of
yes,
course.
The court could not by judgment do it.
Sanjay ji, let me answer that also. Now, the Constitution provided the protection from removal to the CEC. And at that time, the Election Commission was a single-member institution. That protection was not for an individual, but was for an institution, which happened to be a one-man institution. Subsequently, it became three-member institution. The protection logically and automatically should have extended to all three, because all three together are the institution. Protection is for the institution and not for the individual of the CEC. Now, something which was an oversight or carelessness of the government in 1993, that should have been corrected so far. But the governments come and government go, and they don't really bother. These are major issues. Yes.
Yes, the court could not have amended the constitution, because the constitution says that provided that the CEC shall not be removed from his office, except in like manner and on like grounds as the judge of the Supreme Court. And it also says, provided further that any other election commissioner or regional commissioner shall not be removed from office except on the recommendation of the CEC.
No,
so in fact, during the Session case, I happened to assist my senior Mr. J. Ramaswamy for Mr. Session. So I know these ones. It was pointed out that, the two other election commissioners or any number of other election commissioners were necessarily to be subordinate to the election commissioner and not to be placed on the co-equal status. So that was not what was agreed by the Supreme Court.
Yeah, let me make that clear. Because in the Constitution, if you read the Constitution Assembly debates, they discuss whether we should have only one CEC or whether we should have more members. They, in fact, for some time they debated that even one CEC should be a part-time CEC, because we do not have election for 5 years. But later on they said, well, the electoral rolls have to be updated all the time. There might be some contingencies, there might be by-election. So therefore, let us have at least 1% full-time. So, but that the protection was for institution. And at that time, the Constitution visualized that during the election, you can appoint some regional commissioner for 15 days, 1 month. And once appointed, he will be under the supervision of the CEC. But that situation changed because the three-member commission, which came in 1991, amended in 1993, is actually the change in the basic structure of this setup, that from a single member, it became a three-member election commission. All three should be, and so if Supreme Court cannot say that, now it is a three-member commission and all three should be protected, who else will interpret it?
It can't be done by a process of interpretation. It has to be rewritten. And that rewriting has to be by an amendment. That was my limitation.
But at least Supreme Court should have commented on it.
Sanjay ji and Dr. Quraishi, I'm really enjoying this back and forth, because it really actually gave me like a courtroom feel where I'm hearing arguments on both sides. But let me come in here and just ask a little question, because I know I have had these conversations with both of you at different forums and different platforms. And at the heart of this issue was the contentious problem that, the two election commissioners, they didn't have the kind of security and protections that the chief election commissioners had. So they were more vulnerable to pressure or to acting in a certain way, which was the sort of perception behind this. So now that the two of you, of course, whether the Supreme Court should have filled in this gap or not is something that you both seem to disagree upon. But the next step, do you really see the ruling party of the day, which has a majority in parliament, wanting to come in and do the necessary steps, do what is required at the moment? Or do you think they will go back to court? Sanjay ji, do they still have an option of going back again and seeking a revision of this? How is this going to work out? Dr. Quraishi, do you think the parties can come together and actually move forward on this instead of just getting stuck in a battle?
No, my feeling is that just off the cuff, that probably the government will go along with this judgment. They are familiar with the collegium system. They are appointing directors of CBI of their choice. They are appointing in chief information commissioner of their choice, and the CVC. They will continue to appoint CEC of their choice. So they will go along because collegium is taking majority decision. They will use that power and probably fall in line, but Mr. Hegde knows the mind of the court much better. Probably he will throw more light.
No, I'm not, I don't know the mind of the court. But if I was advising the government, I would not I would not recommend that they go back to court for the court to rewrite a judgment, because it's a 5-judge judgment. The judgment proceeds on the premise that the government has not made any laws or parliament has not made any laws. Therefore, there is a gap. If they want to do something, then they can always amend it through the parliamentary route. And while they're redoing it through the parliamentary route, they might as well look at the question of amending the constitution also to give all 3 election commissioners the same status.
Yeah,
Same protection.
Yeah, Mr. Hegde, maybe you can explain this to me also. That sorry, I'll come back to that. I forgot what I was going to say. Some point along the way.
No, but Sanjay ji, there's a question that a lot of people are asking at this point in time, and asking that basically what will then be the implications of this ruling for the judges' appointment for the judicial collegium system? What really is the difference between the collegium procedure that has been suggested for the EC? Will this have a bearing for the appointment of judges?
No, the appointment of the judges is a different question, because all that the collegium system does as far as judges' appointments are concerned is that there is a collegium of judges. So it's in fact something akin to if the election commission were to choose its own successors. That is, the 3 members of the election commission, when one was due to retire, if they were to say that so-and-so will be the next member of the commission, and the government is bound to appoint it. But obviously, in the vast repository of powers under 324, the power of self-regeneration is not there. As far as
yeah, the point
right,
something which I had forgotten, which I now remember, and Hegde may clarify. My understanding of this judgment was that the Supreme Court said that that you have not passed a law for the appointment of let's say election commissioner for 73 years. Yes. Please pass a law, and till you do that, these are the guidelines that you must follow. So these guidelines and interim thing, where the thrust of the judgment was that there's something which has not been done for over 70 years, which is a lapse, which should have been done. And the court expects the government to come up with a law.
It's not that the court expects it, in the sense that when there is a gap, sometimes courts come out with guidelines. Like, for instance, before the gender sensitization law was passed against sexual harassment in the workplace, before there was a law made by Parliament, the court said that till such time as a law is passed, that these will be the guidelines. Similarly, in the case of lynching, there's no lynching law, but the court has passed detailed guidelines on how administration is to operate. So similarly, here also, the Constitution makes a provision for Parliament to make a law with regard to appointment. Parliament has not done it so far. Till they do it, these are the guidelines.
Okay. And Dr. Quraishi, because there has also been that Citizens Commission on Elections report, which has been gathering dust for a very, very long time. So are those recommendations kind of met here? There is a separate debate going on, and I would like to move on to the other topics, including taking questions from our audience. Please feel free to type in your questions into the chat box, or just to raise your hands in the window. We will come to you for questions in just 2 minutes from now. Do you think that most of the recommendations is sort of, which was stemming from that report, Dr. Quraishi, that at least this one takes care of it?
Yeah, okay. I have gone through that report. Basically, it was on the question of EVM. There have been questions raised about EVM always, but ever since we introduced VVPAT, and in fact, they were introduced in my time. Initially, there was no problem. But later on, some issues were pointed out that earlier the EVM was, we could defend because it was one-time programmable read-only chip. You could now 2 and 2 will always make 4 on your calculator. You cannot program it in any other way. Now, ever since the introduction of the VVPAT, when you press a button voting for a person, it goes through a different process. And that is what is being questioned. And if I was the CEC, I would call all these parties and discuss with them instead of becoming, putting my back up and I will not discuss. because all of us, we are stakeholders. The Election Commission is the biggest guardian of the credibility of the Election Commission. Election Commission should call all political parties and the citizen group and understand, look, what are your concerns, and answer them to the satisfaction of everybody. Sitting on prestige, look, who are you? Now, it was headed by a very senior retired judge of the Supreme Court and a very credible Judge Justice Lokur. Now, the committee's report should have been at least discussed in Election Commission. So, and discuss and dismiss, but at least for God's sake, read what they're saying. And for all you know, there might be some sense in it because they have the same interest as you, me, and the Election Commission, the national interest of credible elections.
Okay. Dr. Quraishi, there is a question here from somebody called Sri Harsha who wants to know that can the panel discuss online voting and possibilities of intervention of blockchain technology?
You know, they were certainly not, absolutely not. When even the simple EVM, which is based on 17th century technology of a basic calculator, which is nothing but an adding machine, you press a button, a vote is added. So even that is questioned. Now, what is blockchain? Do you think a common man, even I don't understand, and therefore I reject it? So blockchain, now through blockchain, election can be won only by using technology because nobody understands. So there is no question. And as far as remote voting, internet voting is concerned, this question has been raised before us for the last 20 years. And we have ruled it out, not for so much technical reason, as for two non-technical reasons. Suppose we have an online voting possible. So somebody comes to your house, Smita, and puts a gun on your head. Okay, look, give me your computer and I'll vote myself. We cannot give you protection at home. Or somebody comes with an envelope. Okay, look, here is 5,000. Give me your computer. I'll vote for you and vote on behalf of your family. We cannot. So, which is why we are not looking at even internet voting, because even the simple standalone machine like EVM are being questioned till today. Who will accept the technology of the kind which is being mentioned? What is
so where do you see the EVM debate heading to? You know, every time there is a hue and cry about it. I mentioned Aditya Thackeray, the Shiv Sena leader. Should we switch to ballot paper plus EVMs?
Certainly not. Certainly not. Because, and I have a solution which I've mentioned about here and there, and I'll repeat to you the two possibilities. One, the case which went up before the Supreme Court, how many machines, the slips from how many machines should be counted. This is 5 machines per assembly segment, which is about from 300 machines, count 5. Now that was 5, figure of 5 is very arbitrary. Before that, Election Commission said only 1, that was also arbitrary, because anything will be arbitrary. Why 10%, 20% said. So therefore, I would say that even if you have to count all 100% slips, because it is being ruled out by Election Commission, it will take time. It will delay. What delay? The whole nation wait for election result for 3 months. From the first day of the poll to the last 3 months, the whole nation waits because we want credible election. Half a day more or 1 day more is not going to make a difference. And after that, if you are counting every slip, that is like coming back to the ballot paper without actually going back to the ballot paper. Machine will do its job by printing the ballot, this little chit. That chit you count, instead of 5 booths, count all 100. Now, there is another more nuanced proposal which I have, which is even simpler. Those of you who understand cricket, who follow cricket, you know the decision review system, DRS system. What is DRS system? The opposite, both the teams are given 2 or 3 appeals. Okay, you can question umpire decision on 3 occasions. If you are correct, good for you. If you are wrong, you lose an opportunity. I would say that the top 2 runners-up should be allowed to put their finger on any machine they are suspicious about. Okay, look, count me this machine. So instead of randomly picking up 5 machines from 300, if I pick up 5 which have been pointed out to me, okay, look, count these. I'm suspicious about these. So that will create a lot of credibility. and then you are not counting all 300, you're only still counting 2, 3 or 4, 5.
Cricket is truly a religion in this country. I love how cricketing analogies can come into any discussions. But Sanjay ji, your thoughts on this EVM versus ballot paper debate as a citizen, as a lawyer, and also there's somebody who's not, some anonymous attendee who wants to know what are the constitutional guarantees of the CEC, and if you could also compare it with advanced countries.
Well, strangely enough, many of the advanced countries have worse election systems. You see the USA, there is much greater doubt on the election system out there because each of the states has their own election machinery. The certifying authority is the Secretary of State of that particular state and all that. So I do think we were lucky enough in the early days of the Republic that we had systems that were put in, which have worked till this date. I don't think many countries have this system of symbols. They have, the Democrats in the US have the donkey and the Republicans the elephant, but they are more mascots. They are not symbols. The system of symbols was introduced by Mr. Sukumar Sen primarily because the large majority of India was illiterate at that point of time. So then they had to know who they were voting for. And then symbols took on a life of their own. There's that great story about the Congress in the days that its symbol was the cow and calf. The Chief Minister of Haryana, Bansi Lal, was asked as to how he could give a huge plot of land of 400 acres to a young untested man to set up a car factory. That was, of course, Sanjay Gandhi. So he replied with sound Jat logic, also referencing the symbol. Bachde ko sambalo, gaay apne aap chale aayegi.
True.
so symbols have meant so much. Smita
also.
Yes, Mr. Quraishi.
Yeah, I have been asked this question many times. Look, even USA doesn't or Europe doesn't use EVMs. Why are you using machines? So I have an answer to that. The same way USA, we have a poor illiterate country with 86% illiteracy in 1950 gave equal voting rights to women. But same America, which is admired, took 144 years to give voting rights to women. So who is superior? Secondly, we gave a woman prime minister in 19 years of our democracy. USA hasn't given in 250 years. So to say that, oh, even USA doesn't do this, to learn everything from USA, I don't buy that. There are so many things they can learn from us and they must learn from us. And including, as Sanjay ji rightly mentioned, 2000 elections in Florida was suspected. After that, I have received lots of, lightheartedly, of course, the request from Americans to come and conduct their election. And here was Donald Trump before the election. He said, if I'm losing, I don't accept the result. If this is what is happening in the greater democracy and you want us to learn from them, even America is not doing it, therefore we should not do it. I don't buy that at all. They should learn from us.
Right. Of course,
Smita, just 1 minute.
As
far as the EVMs themselves are concerned, they were fashioned in those days by, I forget the gentleman's real name, but he was also a Tamil author called Sujata. And it was a very simple machine. And I have had a former chief election commissioner, Mr. Gill, tell me, agar ye na hota, to log talwar leke nikal jate the apne to capture booths. So the EVMs are a great way of sorting out a few things.
Yeah.
They, of course, Mr. Quraishi has rightly pointed out that after the VVPAT came in, we have, to a certain extent, compromised the integrity of a standalone machine. There need to be greater checks on the VVPAT slips. I was there even in that case, which said that you please increase the number of checks, and then it went up to 5. But I do think Mr. Quraishi has a point when he says that let the participants themselves point out 5 each.
Okay.
And maybe in one arbitrary one set of booths, all the machines should be counted, all the VVPATs should be counted.
I don't think there should be any more doubt whether there needs to be extra steps and further steps and balances and checks or not. Don't scrap off the EVM, don't throw off the baby with the bathwater, but we definitely need way more balances and checks at this point in time to restore trust. Let me ask Neeraj Sharma, who has his hand raised for a long time. Neeraj, if you're still with us, you can go ahead and ask your question. Tell us, who do you want to answer?
A very good evening to one and all respected panelists. I have two questions. First is that how far have we come in terms of one nation and one election, what we used to listen? And secondly, Dr. Quraishi, we have seen in 2021 that in Assam, in a BJP leaders van, we found EVM machine. So how credible we think that the election went? And secondly, what would be the action taken in such circumstances when this happens? Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks,
No,
Neeraj.
taking the second thing first, that in Assam, and not just Assam, everywhere, somewhere or the other, it comes on the TV that a machine has been found in the wrong place. Some presiding officer has taken it home, or he has gone to a restaurant instead of taking it straight to the strong room. Now, out of 20 lakh machines, 2, 3, 5 such incidents really do not should not cast doubt on the entire process. The action is taken. The action is irregular. It might be without any criminal intent, just stupidity on the part of that presiding officer that he takes it off the route of the given route. On which basis to start questioning the whole system is absolutely wrong. It should be avoided. So that was about Assam. What was the first thing?
One nation, one election.
Can I take
No.
that?
Yeah.
Both of you will take. I'll come to Sanjay ji also.
Yeah. No, I have written many times on this that there is no straight answer for this. There are good points and there are bad points. As far as the Election Commission is concerned, it's a very nice thing for us that we will conduct all 3 elections together once in 5 years, and for 5 years we'll play golf. Good for us, but that elections are not, democracy is not for our convenience. Now, the fact that the Prime Minister did not thrust it on the nation, he says he wants a national debate on this. The debate is still going on, and I'm sure Sanjay ji will spell it out that constitutionally it is not possible, it is not feasible, which is why it has not been thrust on the nation. Otherwise, such a powerful Prime Minister, such a powerful government, they would have done it long ago. And in any case, over the years, they have diluted the argument. Prime Minister in 2013, before he became Prime Minister, had very clearly said that all 3 tiers should be held together, which means 30 lakh sarpanches, then 4,000 MLAs and 543 MPs. Later on, they said, okay, forget about the panchayat, let us deal with the other 2. And then Niti Aayog came with the system. Okay, not once in 5 years, let there be 2 in 5 years. So if you have diluted it so much, then it is not worth it that we tinker with something which requires, which is a question of India's federalism. Now, so imagine a situation where that we have created a one nation, one election situation already. And in Lok Sabha, 10 MPs change their loyalty for whatever reason, and the government falls. Now, 29 states which have come with absolute majorities, because we need simultaneous election, should we have 29 those states also going to the poll again? So that is not possible. The way it is going is fair enough. And to say that because of this, the entire work comes to a standstill is wrong. I could challenge it, because now suppose the election is happening in Ghaziabad. How does it affect my health? It doesn't matter. It may be in in another constituency. Only it matters to the Election Commission, because whether it is Ghaziabad or Hyderabad, they have to be there, and it matters to the Prime Minister and the leaders because they have to be there. For the rest of the people, for the nation, it doesn't really matter that elections are held repeatedly. And finally, I will say that I have once had an RJD MP make a very interesting statement. He says, what do people want? He said, people love frequent elections because that is the only time when they feel important. That is the only time when the MLAs and MPs come in with folded hands to them. So let them feel important. Otherwise, if it is once in 5 years, they will stop bothering about their constituents.
Sanjay ji, your take.
No, the other problem is that a parliamentary system, by definition, has the power of dissolution of parliament also. A prime minister or a chief minister can always recommend dissolution to keep his flock in check. So we are not fixed terms like the US president who's elected for 4 years. So then it's a question of having an election every 4 years. We have had parliaments which have lasted for 2 years. We have had parliaments which have gone the whole way. So then at some point or the other, either a parliament or a legislature is going to get out of sync. And you can't compulsorily saying that if one legislature is gone, then we will have re-elections for the whole country. So that doesn't work. Secondly, and this is a more important thing administratively, Dr. Quraishi will tell you that one of the reasons why elections are held in a staggered manner, especially for the Lok Sabha, is that the central forces have to be moved from state to state because no politician will trust the ruling party of any state to conduct elections within that state. It's only the presence of central forces and central observers that gives a semblance of absolute impartiality.
But the increasing number of phases. The increasing number of phases of elections that are now happening. I mean, elections that can actually be in states, be wrapped up in a 3-phase. They are going up to 7 phases. The issue of security coming up, the issue of forces again being deployed coming up.
Yes, Mr. Quraishi wants to.
Yeah, there are two things in this debate. One, the staggered election, and the allegation is why one nation, one election, because the election, the country is always in election mode. Elections are prolonged. Because of the model code, the entire thing comes to a standstill. Now, at the same time, Mr. Hegde is referred to Gujarat and Himachal elections, which always used to be held together, and they were staggered by 20 days. So that, some announcements had to be made in Gujarat. Because of that, it was delayed. Now, which means the demand that you want to finish the election quickly. Now, what happened to that demand? Something which was you to have finished quickly, you staggered it. The simultaneous elections which are happening for 20 years were staggered. Why? That means there is something wrong with the decision. The other thing about the phases, Mr. Hegde is absolutely right. Every political party demands that we bring paramilitary forces because they come from outside, they don't come under local pressure. And one classic example is when I was doing my Bihar election in 2010, Mr. Nitish Kumar, who was the chief minister, he said, Mr. Quraishi, even if you have to do 10 phases, please bring forces from outside, paramilitary. Now, this is a very interesting case in which the chief minister does not trust his own police because the police is so politicized. So he is demanding that you bring Now, we bring paramilitary force from outside and their number is limited. We call the Home Secretary, ask him how many companies, if one company is 100 people, how many companies can you give us? He gives us X amount and we have already a list of hypersensitive and sensitive booths. So then we calculate how many round we need to rotate the same force, 7 rounds or 8 rounds. Now, this is now the only reason is safety, but it is creating more problem than it was meant to solve. The more problem in the age of social media. It is creating hate speech gets prolonged. By the time our forces reach from one booth, one station to the other in 3 days, the gundas reach in 3 hours. And the fake news and rumors and everything which is happening. Therefore, the answer is we should find a solution to conduct the election in 1 day. And I've offered a solution. Solution is that instead of giving us 800 companies, paramilitary forces, give us 4,000 companies straight away. And instead of 4 months, you give us these companies only
But can
for
they
1
afford
month.
to give? Can they afford to give this large number in one day itself?
Yes, they can. So because we are also shortening the period. Because after all, we thin the borders, we thin the areas where they're deployed. But we take them out for small, say 800 companies for 3 months. Now we say, all right, give us 3,500 companies just for 30 days, not for 3 months, and we'll give them back to you. So it is possible. So we should look at that possibility, because I think multi-phase election is now creating more problems than it is solving.
Rahul Hathi had a hand raised. I have seen it's lowered. Rahul, if you have a question, go ahead, raise your hand. We'll get you on to ask the question. I think there's some. Meanwhile, Mr. Shafiq Ahmed wanted to ask a question as to, after Mr. TN's session, basically what are the issues which had restricted his successors to not conduct free and fair elections or not be as basically active. I think not all successors come in here or all these things, but the perception that basically the conducting process has been on the decline. How do you address that, Dr. Quraishi? Because there is also that issue, and where I would like Mr. Hegde to come in, that when you have the question around media biases, an extended election, multi-phase election, where also the ruling party, the prime minister, goes on campaigning, and most of the TV stations actually have a lot more time to the ruling party than perhaps the opposition parties are getting. Is this something where you need a court's intervention, Mr. Hegde?
Well, how many things can a court actually get into? The courts are supposed to get into specific fact situations, and till a prime minister is voted out, he is the prime minister, or till a chief minister is voted out. There is an incumbency advantage which is sometimes used for more than one purpose. The line between the official and the political gets increasingly thinned out and increasingly blurred. The possibility would be in terms of guidelines which would have to be drawn up by the commission and then enforced by the courts, because after all, it's also a question of the source of power. If the election commission says these things are necessary to conduct a free and fair election without unnecessary bias or unnecessary incumbency advantage, which is then amplified by media channels, or then possibly the courts would have a working draft to enforce or not, or to interpret. So I don't think the courts can get into it at the first instance.
Okay. There's somebody who's also brought up the issue of the Rahul Gandhi disqualification, asking if the law needs to be different for an elected representative. I know there is a separate, in fact, matter that's going on when it comes to decriminalization of politics, debarring people who have been, of course, convicted by a court of law, sentenced by a court of law. Both your views, do you think, moving forward, we have several state elections this year, the next big elections coming up, criminal defamation can be used as an increasing political tool?
Well, it may be used as an increasing political tool, but then the answer possibly is to reduce the sentence legislatively, make the 2-year sentence to a 1-year sentence, and so that that particular avenue of disqualification goes out of the window. But normally 2-year sentences or sentences more than that are given in cases of physical crimes and things like that. So it is not also a good thing to encourage people who have convictions to continue to stand for elections. So this is one of those situations which illustrates that proverb that hard cases make bad law. So
yes, and many countries, Mr. Hegde will confirm, have already decriminalized this.
Because yes, defamation does not need to.
If you abuse me, where is the crime here? If you abuse me, I'll file a suit against you. So making it criminal was a wrong thing. 897 or some 90, as far back as that, it should have been changed. And many countries have done it, and we should think about it ourselves too.
No, the reason for defamation being a criminal offense was that in those days, there were even duels fought for honor. So people would end up shooting each other. Somebody would die in duels and all that. So the lawmakers at that point of time said that rather than dueling outside with weapons, it's better that you duel inside court. So it was against breaches of public peace. But once we have come to an independent country where there is freedom of speech, then you should possibly have restricted defamation to only civil remedies and not made it a crime.
Yes.
Sanjay, also the court in its ruling this time, again going back to the collegium system, I mean, is there a direction that there has to be a separate funding sort of a setup that needs to be set up, a consolidated fund of India, a separate secretariat process?
No, so sorry, the collegium system for appointment of judges, that's a different thing.
No, for appointment of election commission.
No, I don't seem to see.
I think what Smita is referring to is a reference to the funds of election commission coming from the consolidated fund of India, which is a very symbolic thing, because funds of Supreme Court, of the CAG, they all come from consolidated fund. Our funds come through the parliament and they are debated. I suppose we have taken action against some MPs and they will abuse us in parliament when our budget proposal comes. But frankly, I give it a low priority among the reform proposals which are pending from our side. I give it a low priority because in my experience, our budget proposal has never been turned down. So to make it an issue, but symbolically, it's an important thing that our budget should not be debated in parliament. It should be given directly. And we have precedent for it. As I said, the judiciary and CAG, they get directly from the consolidated fund. And they've also mentioned, Smita was referring to, that there should be an independent secretariat. That also has been one of our demands, which means right now we are dependent on getting IAS officers on deputation, and sometimes they deny our proposal. Once it happened that our CEO of Delhi, because he was under the Home Ministry, in the middle of the election, he was transferred to Goa. I protested to the then Home Minister, who was very arrogant, and he turned it down. Now, that's very wrong. That was interfering in our process. So, which is why the proposal that our secretariat should be independent, like Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha, Supreme Court, they have independent secretariat. They're not dependent on the government of the day sending them officers. However, in our case, it may not be possible because the elections are run entirely by IAS and IPS officers. So, if we say we'll have our own secretariat, we'll only have babus of election commission. No IAS can come, no officer can come. And the entire country, the DM and the SP, they are the guys who run the election. Therefore, that proposal also, I think, more important things were made by the Supreme Court. The lesser important things they commented on. And these two were among the less important proposals.
Okay, we have around last 10 minutes. Neeraj wants to come in again with a question. Neeraj, please go ahead and ask.
I'm just adding to my previous question, which I was asking for one nation and one election, that before 1970s, before Mrs. Gandhi has dismissed the Lok Sabha, we used to have like same elections as in states and centers within a very little gap. And then after that, the timeline has changed. So was there any problem in that time when we used to have,
No, your question itself has the answer. Initially, elections used to be for 5 years, there was no midterm election, but there was a need in Kerala that there had to be a midterm election, which is why the election cycle broke. Now that situation will continue, has continued, will continue. There will be midterm elections. The governments will fall. Mr. Hegde was also mentioning governments may keep falling here, there, either the central government or the state government. So, which is what has been happening. So to say that before for the first 5 years it didn't happen, it didn't happen, but later on it happened. So that is the reality we have to face.
So the point is that you might sort of compulsorily hold one set of elections on one nation, one vote, but that cycle can never be maintained. Sooner or later, somebody or the other will say, no, I want to dissolve the assembly earlier, or I want to dissolve parliament earlier. So what Neeraj asked for, as far as Mrs. Gandhi was concerned, so till 1967, somewhere the cycles were maintained. Then 67 was when a lot of opposition in parties also got a lot of MLAs elected. So then you had the Samuyukta Vidayak Dal and this and that. And many of those patchwork governments also fell. So, and Mrs. Gandhi called for early elections in 1971. Because the Congress had split in 69.
Actually, much before Indira Gandhi, it had happened in Kerala.
Yes, the communist government when
Communist
it was
government. Yeah, exactly.
When it was dismissed.
Yes.
So therefore, it is inherent in a parliamentary democracy that the term of a parliament may be less than the 5 years.
Right.
You can't have this one nation, one vote, unless you go to the other extreme and says, irrespective of what happens, parliament will not be dissolved. Then you might actually end up with minority governments and forced governments and all that kind of problem.
Okay, my last... Neeraj, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to mute now because I just going to take the last two questions before we wrap up this conversation. Sanjay ji, I'll come to you with this question. Where does the buck stop when it comes to decriminalizing politics? I mean, governments are also falling, not just because of resort politics. The number of criminals in a lot of state assemblies they seem to be on the rise. We have heard law commission recommendations. We have heard the EC arguments in court. Where does the buck stop?
The answer is not that the buck stops at the election commission, the buck stops at the courts, the buck stops in this institution or that institution. A long time ago, Justice Learned Hand said that liberty lies in the hearts and minds of men and women. When it dies there, no court, no constitution can do much to save it. The buck stops with the people of India. If you go and elect people who are convicted, or you say, irrespective of what criminal behavior they indulge in, this is my man because he belongs to my caste, my community, this, that, and the other, and you go on and vote it, then you will get the government that you deserve. We can have all these cosmetic ones. We take off somebody who's been convicted or convicted for a period more than 2 years, this, that, and the other. But criminalization of politics can only be stopped if the people themselves do not vote. And this multiplicity of parties also. India has never really settled down into a two-party system. I think as democracy matures, it may well be that convicted people and people with criminal records will be kept out of it.
Dr. Quraishi?
I don't know what Dr. Quraishi says. Yes.
The concerns that, that those with criminal antecedents, even if you are basically before 1 year before the scrutiny process happens for nominations, in that case, you debar them. How do you make sure that the debarring process is sifted from making it into a vendetta tool? And where does the buck stop again for you?
We have been demanding debarring the criminals from contesting election. And the answer given to us is the two. One, that sometimes the politicians file false cases against each other, so it can be misused, the process can be abused. And more important, they say that the law of the land is presumption of innocence. Till you are convicted, you are innocent. Very well taken, agreed. But I have a counter question, which nobody has ever answered, although there have been judges and juries sitting in the audience. And my counter question is, maybe Mr. Hegde will help me find the answer. In Indian jails today, there are 4 lakh prisoners. of which 71%, 270,000 are under trial. That means innocent, because they are not yet convicted. Innocent. But you have taken away 4 of their fundamental rights. Fundamental, I repeat, the right to liberty, freedom of movement, freedom of occupation, right to dignity. And they are innocent people. And you have taken them away within the ambit of law. Now, right to contest is not even a fundamental right, it is a statutory right. What if it is suspended for 1 year? What heavens will fall? So how can we have such discrimination? In fact, I once wrote an article and my last sentence was, Supreme Court, please take it as my PAL, please release all these 270,000 innocent people, because they are innocent if you can't take action against criminal MPs and MLAs. So why this kind of discrimination? This is my PL, please release them immediately. They are innocent people. So, and all within the ambit of law. So what are we talking about?
Okay. Yes, Sanjay ji.
There's a danger there, no? There's a danger there. That if we start keeping people out because there are criminal charges and the trial is not over, then you've seen recently that how fast a conviction was obtained. It's very easy for governments or for opponents to put the criminal law in motion and knock people out. So
good point.
But when the crimes are related to very heinous crimes, when it's related to a gang rape, when it's related to kidnapping, when it's related to murder.
In fact, let me clarify, Smita. In fact, that is what Election Commission has proposed. The 3 safeguards. 1, it should be a heinous offense which will lead to imprisonment of more than 5 years. Right? Which means किसी ने किसी को गाली दी, थप्पड़ मारा, but they're ruled out. You violated section 144, doesn't matter. So heinous offenses. Secondly, the case should have been filed at least 6 months before, and on the request of law minister, we had made it 1 year. The case should have been registered 1 year before the election. And thirdly, and most importantly, a court of law should have framed the charges. Justice Mr. Hegde will agree with me that 5 years imprisonment means district and session court. That is the highest court after the high court. If they have framed the charges, at least they are neutral. They are not the police who sometimes investigate, don't investigate, and do all kinds of things. This is a district and session judge, and if he is framing the charges, at least these kind of people should be considered from debarring, not every crime.
Okay. Just the last 2 questions. Rahul Hathi has put in a question, Dr. Quraishi, asking that the West Bengal government is planning to conduct election in a single phase. By looking at the scenes of the last panchayat elections, does it look possible?
No, you're talking of the state elections, I'm sure. But, I have no comment on the state election. But if they have enough security forces, because the only trade-off in a single phase election is loss of life. And in West Bengal, we have a history of loss of life, which is why, we have always held election in West Bengal and Tamil Nadu at the same time. They are similar size states, but we do Tamil Nadu in 1 phase and West Bengal in 7 phases. Why? Because the ground reality is different. So if a West Bengal government has found a solution to safeguard law and order, and they can do it in 1 phase. 1 phase election is an ideal election, and multi-phase is a majburi.
Okay. And Mr. Hegde, on this very sensitive issue of electoral bonds, how is it playing out in courts currently? I mean, the bonds are again opening up for sale, even as we speak. What should we expect from the courts?
The courts can examine the scheme. They can also examine it for constitutionality. But constitutionality is often whether there is legislative competence or whether there is manifest arbitrariness. So these are very high standards of unconstitutionality to be achieved before something is struck down. Again, you see opaque electoral bonds. They inject all kinds of money into the system, which is currently untraceable. or supposedly untraceable. The remedy again lies with the people, and it also I think at some stage a future parliament by consensus will have to abolish them.
Dr. Quraishi, your concluding thoughts on this issue?
Yeah, I have always opposed the electoral bonds because before they were introduced, in fact, I would recollect the speech of the finance minister, the budget speech, in which his first sentence was that without transparency of political funding, free and fair elections are not possible. Oh, it was music to my ears. His second sentence, for the last 70 years, we have failed to achieve that. Another important statement. So we expected that the third sentence to say that now we are going to introduce transparency of political funding. And what they did, whatever transparency existed was killed. What was the transparency before that? Every transaction of more than 20,000 was brought to the notice of Election Commission. And after this, even 2 crores or 20 crores or 2,000 crores, we don't know. What is the quid pro quo? Who gave to which political party, and what are the contracts and licenses and bank loans with which they run away? No idea. So, and I have also offered a solution. In fact, by the way, when I wrote this article in Indian Express, Mr. Pali Nariman wrote a beautiful letter to me, appreciating, this is the best article I've read. And what did I suggest? 30-second solution. All right, the only argument they say, instead of cash, it is now all banking. Fine. All right, but just disclose who gave how much money to whom. Because people want to know, people want not opacity, the donor may want opacity, people want transparency. Just tell us which party got how much from whom. Just disclose it, and Supreme Court can easily order it. And why they have not taken it up for 5 years? I hold it against the Supreme Court. This was a very important matter where in India's democracy, the quality of democracy is dependent, and it is such a low priority thing that the court has found no time for 5 years. What is this? But I hope they take it up now, and at least they order that please disclose. See, that's my suggestion. I would love to hear Mr. Hegde.
Sir, your final words. Can the court do a course correction soon?
The court has many priorities, and ultimately the Chief Justice is the master of the roster. But I do hope they hear it soon, because otherwise, if they hear it closer to 2024, that itself will be seen as being political.
Right. And I mean, the sooner they hear it and get a final sort of a closure to this matter, it is better. This is again another year where we'll have a lot of state elections and a lot of resort politics also playing out, unfortunately, which is the unfortunate truth. And I think as experts, subject matter experts always keep on reminding us that the conduct of successful elections need not necessarily translate into the good health of a democracy. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind for all of us. And that's where, in fact, the people's power, our voting rights, our fundamental choices is what we need to weigh in and introspect on very, very seriously if we want to keep our democracy truly strengthened and vibrant. Thank you so much, Dr. S.Y. Quraishi, Mr. Sanjay Hegde, and to all the participants who tuned in for this conversation. A quick reminder again, Kautilya School of Public Policy, our admissions are on. It's in the final stretch for the MPP cohort of 2023-2025. Do take a look at the, in fact, application processes and what the campus, the course curriculum has to offer. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you.